Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to return an item. So I'll just do a quick transaction to get a sale in, and then we'll go back and return it. Okay, so I just sold a tuner and the customer's changed their mind and they want to return it. This could be 2 minutes after they bought it or 2 weeks after they bought it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw my username in and scan the tuner back into the invoice detail grid. So by default, when we scan it in, it's making the quantity 1, and we want to change that to negative. The system's now asking if this line is a return, and we're going to say yes to this. So now the system does require cross-validation to the original invoice. So the original invoice, the customer needs to have that slip with them, and we grab the invoice number off of it, or we can go back into the system to determine the invoice number. Now the invoice number in this transaction was 82368. And so what it does is the system goes back, checks that invoice number, makes sure that this item is on that invoice, and additionally it says, okay, what was the price that this item was sold for? So if we had given the customer a discount, it would change the original price. So say I sold this for $15 to this customer. It's going to check the invoice. It's going to say on this invoice, the SN8 was actually sold for $15, not $21.95, and it would override that price. So it's a great cross-validation there. Now also, if I throw the wrong invoice number in, it's going to give me an error. And it's doing a cross-validation and saying it's not a valid invoice for this item. You need to make sure that you have the right invoice. And we just hit commit. Alright, so after that we can just complete the transaction as per normal. Choose our payment type and our payment. And all this is saying is that we owe the customer $24.80 in cash. Now, if for some reason you can't find the invoice number or you can't determine what it is, there is a workaround. However, there are security settings in the system which prevent this workaround. So you need to have authorization. Your security group, so I'm in the security group senior manager, has the authorization to do what's called a trade-in. So if we go back up here, and we're going to say no rather than yes for this being a return. So I'm going to click no, which means it's a trade-in. So you may not trade items in without a valid customer entered. So you're not allowed to use the default cash customer as your customer if you're doing a trade-in. And it's also checking security settings to make sure that I have authorization to do trade-ins. Okay, so I just attached my name as the customer. And now we'll do a trade-in and I'll show you how it works. It's as simple as that. So it hasn't done the cross-validation to confirm the price against the invoice. It hasn't done any validations essentially. But we do have a customer attached to the transaction, and we've also confirmed that this user has authorization to do trade-ins. Currently at our store, we don't allow our staff to do trade-ins. They have to have an invoice to match it to. Okay, so how would we find the invoice for this item if the customer didn't have the invoice? Okay, so what we do is we just click the browse, and this is the item number, so we're going to click on this. So that brings us into Inventory Browse. So from the Inventory Browse screen, we're looking at the SKU SN8. I want to right click and go to Movement. So this is going to show all the movements of the SKU, sales, receipts, etc. So on February 21st at 8:46 in the morning, the user Graham sold one of these units out of the default warehouse for $21.95. The transaction number is not your invoice number. That is actually your invoice detail. So that's the actual line of the invoice. But if we click on this, it's going to bring up our invoice. So this is the entirety of the invoice here. And you're going to see the detail number over here, which is not what we're looking for. We're looking for the invoice ID right here, which is 82368. From here we can reprint the invoice. Brings up a sample and it shows you where 82368 is, your invoice number at the top of your printed receipt. And we can just hit OK and it'll print another copy out for us. Now conversely, if a customer wanted you to email you a copy of the receipt, you can just click the email button and send a copy to that customer. You need to have your email program set up to handle that. Additionally, you could click PDF and create a PDF of the invoice to print off of a normal printer rather than a receipt printer, or to save the file for some other purpose. Generally speaking, you're just going to hit the reprint button or email if it was an online type customer. Okay, so that shows you quickly how to retrieve the invoice number if it's missing, or the customer doesn't have the receipt specifically. Okay, so the customer's returning, they get $24.80 cash. We can hit print to confirm, and we hand the customer their cash. Another receipt prints up, and we've completed the return.